Anthony Grassi here for College.town at the 2025 NACDA Convention. Happy to sit down with Mammoth Assistant Vice President of Consulting, Tim Selgo. Tim, legend of NACDA, thank you for joining me.
Anthony, thanks for having me. I don't know that I'm a legend. I hope I'm not that old yet, but I appreciate being here.
There are not many small college administrators that are former NACDA past presidents, so I appreciate you taking the time. I'm curious as we sit here in Orlando, what the value of NACDA has been on your career.
It's been immense on my career. You know, I was talking, my first NACDA convention was 1989. I was Associate Athletics Director at Toledo at the time. And it was in just a hotel in Marco Island. One hotel hosted this thing. And it was great then. I got excited about it. I learned a lot. And thankfully, now that's been 36 years ago, I've had the opportunity to attend so many of these, I've lost track, almost all of them in that time. And it's been a fantastic thing for my career. You know, there's a lot of different facets of this convention where a leader in college athletics can grow. Just by networking with people, of course, you have to network, especially those that are in the entry-level administrative positions. They want to network and see, figure out their pathway. I had kind of figured mine out by the time I started at NACDA. I was Associate Athletics Director. I wanted to be an athletics director. So I would pick the brains of athletics directors while I was here and try to learn from them in as many one-on-one conversations as I could, besides going to the educational sessions. And our educational sessions today are second to none. I mean, you're going to find something here that's fantastic for you to grow and learn from. But for me, Anthony, one of the biggest things that really boosted me as a leader was when I started getting involved in the NACDA Executive Committee. I was honored to be part of the Executive Committee. And then I grew from that and watched people, and you were sitting in meetings and watching and learning from some of the best in our profession. And then I can't believe I was so honored and humbled to be named the third vice president in 2013. Which sent me on the pathway to third to second to first. And then I was unbelievably fortunate to be president of this organization from 2015, 2016, and it still is one of the highlights of my very busy year, I might add. Very busy. That was my last year as AD, too, by the way. So I was a tired puppy when this convention was over, but man, was it rewarding, and it's still rewarding and wonderful to come back.
What value when you mentioned the value for people of all levels, but the entry-level individual, as somebody who attended their first NACDA much more recently than you did, what advice would you give to that individual out there now if this is their first or second NACDA, that this place is a lot more overwhelming, I imagine, than the single hotel in Marco Island?
Yes.
And it can, I remember my first time here, I was walking around like a chicken with no head, with no direction. So what would your advice be there?
Be intentional when you come here. Go to the educational sessions ahead of time. Scout them out. They're all on the app now. In those days, we got this great big program, right? But study them. Who do you want to see? What topics do you need help with in your career? And, make sure you go to those sessions. There's wonderful socialization at this. It's one of the beauties of it. Just going to the exhibit hall for a couple hours and hanging out and chatting with people. That's very important. And you know what? In June, every person in athletics administration needs to do that, right? There comes a time you need to unwind a little bit, decompress. And so this is great for that. But from 8 to 5, be intentional. Find that programming that best suits you, your institution, and or your career, and get there. Get yourself up and go to it, all right? There's some, we're going to listen to Charlie Baker today. And, that room better be packed. I'm assuming it will be, because you've got to take it all in. Again, probably the number one thing is to be intentional. Before you get here, scout out what you want out of NACDA, all right, in these 2+ days. And then you're going to be tired when it's over, because you're right. It can be overwhelming, right? If you have... when my wife goes shopping in Costco and there's way too much, it's, she gets, what do they ever call, sensory overload. Yeah. And you can get that here. But be intentional, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to learn, and you're going to think, man, I got to go to this again next year, and you will.
One of your areas of focus at Mammoth is leadership development. Obviously, that's a key tenet of being here at NACDA. When you think about the development of the athletic director, the small college athletic director today, what is the biggest challenge that you see them facing in their role? Obviously, their institutions are facing a number of challenges,
Yeah.
both on the athletic and institutional side, but the individual leader themselves, what are the biggest challenges you see them facing?
Well, the challenges haven't changed a whole lot since I started as AD at Grand Valley 29 years ago. The finances are always a challenge. Today, they're a challenge in part because enrollment at institutions is down. And that means the budgets of institutions aren't as good as they were. And somebody's got to get cut. And when you're on a college campus, athletics can't be spared cuts when every other unit on campus is getting cut. So finances are always a challenge. You know, in the mid-90s, it was, how are we going to generate more corporate partners? You know, we need more expendable money to do extra special things and really get this thing going, right? How are we going to do that? How are we going to generate more revenue from our alumni in annual giving? That remains a challenge, right? But there's always been those challenges. But today it's the challenges of reduced enrollments at Division II, Division III, NAIA institutions. A lot of them are small private institutions. I've had the opportunity to work with quite a few of them in the last 9 years in my consulting work. And it's difficult out there right now. If you're in higher education, you better work at recruiting and retaining your students. Athletics departments have always been pretty good at that. You know, we have these things called teams, and they have a home when they're on our campus. And they have a leader, a coach that's looking after these kids. And, you know, so the enrollment and retention of student athletes at many small institutions is actually growing. It's helping the institutions maintain their levels of enrollment. But then that creates another challenge of athletics programs are getting too big, and you're going to have limited staffing, limited resources in small college athletics, and that comes back to funding.
Is there a theme that has, and you've mentioned you've been doing this for a little while,
Yeah.
has that, obviously the challenges remain the same, the nature of the leader itself, are there attributes that have shifted over time, whether that's coming up, the average AD has a different skill set that they do have now that maybe they didn't, or vice versa, that, you know, somebody when you were coming up, an AD was more comfortable with versus the other way around?
The biggest change in the demographics of the athletics directors, the leaders, has been 30 years ago, more of them came through the coaching ranks. And today, you know, Anthony, I graduated from my bachelor's in college in 1980. At that time, I believe there were only 2 sport management programs in the country. Ohio University was the granddaddy of them all. And I believe Springfield College or the University of Massachusetts, one of those in Massachusetts had one. And now there's sport management programs everywhere, right? And sports today now comprise, competitive sports, youth, high school, college, pro sports comprise 6% of our country's GDP. All right, that's significant. All right, we have this now we didn't have back then. This and you know, I'm pointing to all the cameras and the multimedia stuff, right? But the job of the leader hasn't changed. I would contend, I don't care what your background is, the best leaders have always been great teachers. If you think of your great teachers in your life and what characteristics they brought to the table that made them be your mentor and you want to follow their lead, well, they knew how to teach, they could motivate, they could inspire, they held you accountable, they knew how to communicate, they cared about you, right? They spent extra time with you. All those characteristics made them great leaders. And the leader today still, I believe, the best teachers are still the best leaders, and I believe that's true in any walk of life. In business, government, healthcare, athletics, in the clergy, all right, the best leaders are teachers. They can communicate their message to the recipients. And that's what leadership is. If you're an athletics director, that staff of yours, they better know what your vision is. And they better know what your plan is. And you better be able to explain it in terms they understand and your superiors understand. That's really important. Because in small college athletics, the vast majority of your budget is going to be determined by your president or chancellor and his or her cabinet. And those people need to know what your plan is in athletics. And in order for them to really understand it, you've got to be able to teach it to them and communicate it to them in a way they understand it. And, I go back a long ways to my own father, who was a great high school teacher and coach, and he followed the KISS method of teaching. Keep it simple, stupid. And so I've always tried to do that throughout my career. And I think that holds true no matter what background an athletics director gets to that chair, whether it's compliance, coaching, marketing, fundraising, it doesn't matter. You got to be able to teach. And so I would argue with leadership development, what I like to do with the folks that I work with and mentor, try to help them become better teachers.
During your time at Grand Valley, you had, we'll say, a handful of people that were underneath that became ADs, that became leaders in this industry, and still are leaders in this industry. How did you turn them maybe from leaders into teachers?
Thank you for asking that, because not only am I proud of those people that become athletics directors, they helped me become successful as an athletic director, big time. Lisa Sweeney was my SWA for 11 years. She went on to be an athletics director at Armstrong Atlantic University, which was Division II at the time. Mm-hmm. They merged with Georgia Southern and no longer exist, but she had great success while she was there. Carrie Becker then followed Lisa and was my successor and doing a great job at Grand Valley. They're winning another Director's Cup here tonight, and very proud of Carrie and everything she's done and all her staff. Doug Lipinski was our associate athletics director at Grand Valley. Hired Doug in the early 2000s. He was with me for about 12 to 14 years, and then he recently became the athletics director at West Texas A&M University, and very proud of him, and he'll do a fantastic job out there. What I wanted to do with my staff was put them in a position where they could be the leader. We had 20 sports at Grand Valley while I was there, 600 student athletes. It's hard to be everywhere at once.
Of course.
And you've got to learn, and I had to learn over time as part of my development to, relinquish that. All right, give it up, turn it over to them. Let them have sports supervisory roles. And that's huge. You got 3 sports, you got 3 or 4 sports, and I'll help you at the end. We'll evaluate the coach, and I'm always there. But you're there with all the day-to-day. You deal with all the day-to-day with those sports. That's one of the best ways to learn, right? Put them in a position. Practice, sure. Correct. And so we did that a lot. Then the other thing I did, I would always have conversations with them about being an AD. I always made sure they came to NACDA, right? And learn. And I can remember with Lisa and Carrie and with Doug, I know I had this conversation with all of them. I knew they were talented. They made me look good. And I would sit down with them, and then we, end of the year perhaps, summer, let's talk about your career. What are you thinking? What? And they were, I'm not sure I want to be in your chair. Why not? And they said, well, it's tough. Athletic director's job is tough. It's time intensive, and it's a difficult job. But I would say to them, all right, you've been around. You've seen all the ADs in our league and around Division II. You think you're better than half of them? Oh yeah, I think I am. Well, there you go. Yeah. There you go. That you're absolutely right. You are. So let's get you on a pathway to do that. And so Anthony, I would try to put them in position where they were the leaders, and I would stand back and of course help them and be there. But I had great people. That's the key to it all. And they now know that. Best, the number one job is to find the best people you can to surround yourself with.
You obviously are involved with operational feasibility studies that happen on campus through Mammoth. Is the move to sports sponsorship or sport supervision for senior administrators a challenge at most campuses, given all of the responsibilities that exist for small college administrators, given the limited resources, the limited staff, all those things?
Yeah. Well, what's difficult about it is many schools at the non-Division I level are really limited in staffing. And we were at Grand Valley when I started. We grew as time went. As we started generating well over 10,000 a game at football and, having the great success we had, we grew, and so we had some positions that kind of evolved. They all started as part-time, graduate assistantships, and that was the way for us to build them up into full-time positions, right? But it's never easy when you have limited staffing and 20 some sports. I work with clients now that have 25 or more sports. You can't be there for all of it, and so you've got to relinquish some of that and let some other people get some of that responsibility. And even if it's just one or two others on your staff, to help relieve your load a little bit, because that piece about external revenue generation is getting bigger. And as an athletic director, that's a time-consuming job. That's relationships, man. And so that pulls you in that direction. And so you need somebody to handle the day-to-day issues when the student athlete or the cheerleader or the janitor's complaining about a coach. It's time for some people to take on those challenges. Leadership is problem solving and decision making, Anthony. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I had a math background growing up, so maybe that's why I like to solve problems. But it's problem solving and decision making. I used to tell my staff, if we didn't have any problems, they wouldn't need us. So let's not complain about them. We got great jobs because we're here to help this institution solve these problems.
Right.
So let's go solve them. And again, some of that is experience. You just have to give your staff the opportunity to get those experiences that you were fortunate enough to have yourself.
Was that how you set it up when you first started, or was there a moment during your initial tenure as AD where you said, this is not sustainable for the best, to optimize Grand Valley, I need to make a change?
Yeah.
And what was that moment?
I can tell you that the moment was in probably my first 18 months.
Okay.
I got to Grand Valley. We had been NAIA not too long earlier, maybe 10 or 12 years earlier, and it wasn't anything like it is today. All right, and everybody on campus came to me with everything, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what?" The dean, the student affairs director was coming to me. Everybody was coming to me. I said, "Wait, how about my SWA?" Hey. We have facilities guys, because we had very nice facilities. You need to talk to our facilities manager, right? I had to kind of teach the rest of the people on campus who to go to in our athletics department. So that started it all. But in about 18 months, I realized, we had 20 sports. And now, men and women's cross country, track and field were 6 of those, cross, indoor and outdoor for men and women. But that's 14 or 15 head coaches. And I realized, I was doing the evaluations of all these people, and that's a task now. And I took a lot of time at that. People make you successful. Finding the right ones to surround yourself with is the most important job you do, and then helping those people develop is extremely important. Professional development, in many schools are underperforming in that. As we're at NACDA, right? Nobody comes into any of these levels, Division 1, 2, 3, or NAI, they're instantaneously ready to go and have it all figured out. No, they all have to grow and get better. All right. So, we had to commit dollars to that. I wanted that because I wanted our staff to grow and get better. But the challenges in my first year, at the end of my first year, our men's basketball coach left, took another job. I had to hire a men's basketball coach. At the end of the winter sports season, I was dragging. I was really tired. And my boss looked at me in a one-on-one and said, "You look tired." And I go, "I am tired." And now I got to go get a basketball coach. And I realized then I had to make some adjustments. And I had to farm out some supervisory roles on my staff. The other thing I had to do, Anthony, and this is critical, I think, I felt even our own staff and all of our head coaches came running to me with every little problem, right? Come on, all right, the baskets weren't set up exactly on time today. We got people down there to do that. Go see them. All right, if it continually happens, then come see me. But, I was getting those kinds of issues daily. And I realized this is not sustainable, as you said. So I had to develop a structure where I could have a little bit more touch with the coaches on a little bit more big picture items and not this little day-to-day stuff. They had to realize, hey, we got to get beyond some of this stuff. You got to solve some of this on your own. And I felt I was getting pulled in so many directions, though, I was losing that little connection with the head coaches. So I created head coaches breakfast, just me and the head coaches. We had one during exam week in December. It's a little downtime. Nobody practices on Monday or Tuesday. They're all taking exams. Had breakfast, coffee, rolls, and 2.5 hours. I had an agenda of big picture things. What's the budget picture look like for next year? What are we thinking in terms of facilities upgrades? Mental health issues came about big time 15 years ago. How are we going to solve this? What should we be doing? All that kind of thing is just me and the head coaches. And we did it again in April during exam week, and they really appreciated that. I could open up a little bit on my thinking, strategically thinking, right? My job was to plan, but all right, let's have a conversation about this. And that helped me a little bit because I couldn't get to the day-to-day. But this is a long answer to your question. So I learned that early on in my tenure as AD. And then as time went, and I got better at delegating, some of my staff would say I got too good at it. I got better at delegating. One of the things I always was able to do was I kept my Monday morning calendar free because that's the Monday after all the contests. And I would go around to the offices and sit down with if I was at the game, we'd talk about the game, let them vent to me about the officials, all right, and talk about this or that, right? Or if I wasn't, if it was a road game and I wasn't there, tell me about this. What happened? I was listening to the radio or following on game stats and tell me what happened. And sometimes the head coach may or may not have been in the office, but the assistant coach was. And I'd sit down and have those conversations with the assistant coaches. And I know that meant a lot to them, that the AD, the boss, was coming. Because I remember when I was in those shoes, right? Yeah. And I miss that. I miss those Monday mornings just about the game. And yes, a good part of it was the venting to me about the officials.
So we've mentioned the limited resources and how that's impacting professional development across the country. How would you advise maybe ADs across small college athletics? Obviously, NACDA being a key tenet for professional development in this industry, but for those that can't make it to NACDA every year, how would you go about developing as a leader outside of just this event?
Well, I believe the best leaders are really good teachers, educators. And to be a really good teacher and a good leader, you have to be a continual learner. You have to want to learn, all right? For me, outside of this, it was books. I love to read, Anthony. I always have 2 books going at once. I love to read, and I now listen to podcasts when I'm walking, my exercising. All right, I'm not as good an audio learner as I am a visual learner, and so for me, reading is really the best way I can learn. Now I know other people that would rather listen. Right, and go for it, because you have an unlimited professional development out there right now that we didn't have before the internet.
Right.
People are going to whine about the internet, social media, and AI. They're wonderful tools. There's some good and bad and all that, right? But they're wonderful tools to take advantage of to help you become a better leader. And one of those is on the internet. My goodness, you can just Google anything. Best ways to dress for an interview. Boom, you got some ideas, right? Then you mix that with your own brain, and where you're going to interview, read the room, right? Go to certain schools, you be careful how you dress, all that. But, there's so much you can learn out there, Anthony, beyond this. Last thing I'll tell you about this, though. Look for your mentors. Find good mentors. I was so fortunate in my lifetime. My dad was a great teacher and a coach that I've mentioned. He was my first mentor, all right? My college coach, Bob Nichols, is the winningest coach in the history of the Mid-American Conference in men's basketball to this day. He retired in 1986. He passed away in 2011. He's still the winningest and most successful coach in the history. And he stood the test of time in a tough conference for 22 years. That's success. He was a mentor to me. I was able to play for him and coach for him. And so I learned so much from him, right? John Wooden was a mentor to me from a distance, okay? I have every John Wooden book there ever was. And, Coach Wooden's passed away, all right? I met him in person when he was 95. To me, that was going to the mountaintop. But those were mentors to me. Now, that was, I'm a baby boomer. Those are all white men. There are so many more role models and mentors out there in athletics today of a more diverse group of people just walk around NACDA. And so young people today starting in this profession, man, you're so fortunate. You've got so many people you can lean on in so many ways, whether it's through books, podcasts, any way you can learn and get better. And, you always got to be getting better. Now, I will tell you this. In the summertime was when I would read my leadership books and sports books. And during the seasons, from September to May, I tended to read books that took my mind off of sports. All right? I like history, biography. My dad was a history teacher. I like those. I read a lot of those. Any fiction I read was probably old Western. I love that. All right? And I read those during the seasons. Off season, where I could relax a little bit, chill out. That's where I'd really dig in to some books. And I did a lot of my planning in the summer months.
Excellent. Tim, thank you for all the insights. I appreciate them today here at NACDA.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Appreciate it.